Free-range kids are simply those who are allowed considerable latitude and independence in their movements. There are stories of 4-year-olds taking the tram across town to do the shopping or visit relatives. Even in the 1920s, this must have been somewhat unusual, but it points out just how much freedom of movement our children have lost. Not long ago, a newspaper columnist allowed her 9-year-old to take the subway home from a department store in Manhattan, giving rise to shrieks of child abuse. The boy arrived home uneventfully. How and why have we moved from a society where even quite young children had great freedom of movement to one in which even teenagers have to be driven everywhere? The answer is disturbingly simple and consists of just one word: cars. This is not the case everywhere. In Venice today, even quite small children are allowed out on the street by themselves. They're unlikely to get hurt, and the boost in self-esteem is significant and important. These Venetian boys are exploring their world a good 10 years sooner than their counterparts in car-dominated cities and suburbs. They're about 4 years old and already seem to have a firm grip on reality. The freedom of children began to ebb in the 1920s when automotive interests managed to convince the public that it was not the motorist's job to watch out for kids, but the parents' job to keep the kids out of the street. Publicity campaigns were aimed at keeping kids out of the streets, thereby making them safe for cars. The kids were told that they had to take responsibility for crossing streets safely. If anything went wrong, it was an accident and no fault of the driver. So, how do kids in car-free areas use these safe and inviting places? Toddlers are rarely very far from a parent, but under these safe conditions, they can range out some distance. Kid and parent keep an eye on each other, just in case, but the child gets to explore his world, and the parent can socialize or relax. As children reach school age, they're able to get back and forth from school on their own, as I always did when I lived within walking distance of school, starting with first grade. This was in northern Maine, and sometimes I was pretty cold by the time I got home, but nothing untoward ever happened. In today's car-free areas, older children, starting around age 9, are allowed to stray from the beaten path between home and school. They're free to explore their world within quite wide limits. In this era of cell phones, it's easy for a kid to call for help or for the parent to check in. Teenagers are free to meet up with their friends and hang out in the local square. Like teens everywhere, they can sometimes get a bit loud, but kids who have grown up with some independence in public places already know how to behave by the time they reach their teens. Car-free kids don't have to wait for a driver's license and access to the family car to attain a measure of freedom. Sadly, many teens are not ready for the huge responsibility, and a young driver makes a fatal mistake, bringing his newfound freedom to a tragic end. This happens thousands of times a year in the United States. If we really cared about our children, we would arrange for them to grow up in a world free of automotive toxins that damage their health. We would make a world safe enough for them to explore on their own from an early age. We would arrange their schools to be within walking distance and free of traffic noise, which markedly improves learning. We would provide for their independent mobility, starting with their first year of full-time school. Even today in the Netherlands, most first graders walk or bike to school on their own. There is no magic to this. We know how to do it. After all, every street was car-free until Carl Benz put the first practical car on the road in 1885. Today, our bag of tricks includes the provision of excellent urban transport using electric rail systems. We don't need cars in cities. We never did.